Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Aggressive Negotiations, the Star Wars podcast you always wished that you had been listening to, but now you are, and so you're super excited to be doing so. I am one of the hosts, Jedi Master Matthew Rushing, and with me, as he is always, my good friend, Count Dooku's ghost. I mean, John Mills.
It's really, it's progressed. I'm no longer just Count Dooku's ghost. I'm his earthly vassal. He is possessed.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
Ooh.
and he is the reason, I believe, that I have become such a fan of the Fast and the Furious series. Actually,
I thought that was the reason that you had grown a very pointy beard.
No, the pointy beard is simply because I'm evil.
Okay,
that
makes sense.
It made me a willing host for Count Dooku.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, no, that I can completely understand that.
Yes.
Wow, earthly vassal. I for some reason I'm being thrown to my Harry Potter podcast with Drea Kaufman, thinking about vassals for Voldemort there. But
Yes.
anyway, that's a whole other topic.
It is.
John, we got a couple things to do tonight. One of them I want to do is remind everybody that we only have, really, by the time that people hear this, hopefully you've gotten your iTunes reviews in, because our very next episode will be picking the winners of our exclusive t-shirt. And so make sure you get those reviews and ratings in. We really appreciate everybody who's gone and done that so far. It's really helped out the show. And right now, we have 32 written reviews out of 37 star ratings and reviews. So, that's a really good rating, and we want to thank everybody for doing that. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, guys. We're there. It's a great place to find us. If you haven't, review and rate us there. And there's a couple other places, John, other than Apple Podcasts, where people can find us and maybe connect with us. Let everybody know where they can do that. And then, I don't know, I might have a question for you.
Well, the best way to reach out to us, I would say, would be to go to thenerdparty.com/contact, look up Aggressive Negotiations, and you can just fill out a contact form. It'll send us an email. We have responded to things that have been submitted through there on air before. You can also visit us on Facebook at facebook.com/thenerdparty. And there are two ways you can find us on Twitter. One is to go to the Nerd Party Network, and that is at Join Nerd Party. And you can reach out to the show directly at the Jedi Masters. So I'd say that those are some really good channels to go ahead and reach out to us.
No, definitely fantastic channels to go through. You don't have to resort to Owlpost or the HoloNet. You can just go to earthly measures. No reason to go above and beyond. And we really appreciate everybody who connects with us, especially, on Facebook, where we put our shows and people comment on them, about what they listened to and what they heard. And it creates a nice discussion. So keep doing that, because I love hearing from you guys. And, we love talking to you guys on Twitter and what's going on with Star Wars. There's so much. I mean, gosh, John, we even got news today that Star Wars is moving back to May.
Yeah.
For episode 9, just because, they've had a few things happen that's pushed that back. But hey, back in May.
Yeah, well, back in May, which is fantastic. And hopefully the writer's strike doesn't make that move back to December of that year.
That's actually, you make the joke, but hopefully that's not the case, because that's actually one of the things they are doing is doing a little rewriting.
I actually would say that I remember with Celebration, everybody was like, "Oh, I'm kind of surprised they didn't announce an anthology movie." I suspect that possibly they know what it's going to be, but because they know this writer's strike is looming, they know that as soon as they announce something, they're not going to be able to pin down to a release date. So they're kind of like, they don't want to be in the Star Trek Discovery boat where it's like, okay, finally we're going to get it. Well, maybe not now.
Well, and who knows? Anyway.
Yeah.
John, I have a question for you. So we just recently got the BluRay release for Rogue One, which, God, I love when we get a new Star Wars film that comes out for home release, because it means I can just pop it in and watch it whenever I want. One of the things that I think both you and I, and we talked about this with The Force Awakens, we love extras, right? And
Yes.
we mentioned me going to the panel where they talked about the making of Rogue One, and we mentioned some things there. We've both had an opportunity to finally sit down and watch those extras. And so my first question for you is, what did you think of what we did get extras-wise here on the Rogue One Blu-ray release?
One, I want to outline that I wasn't disappointed with what we got for one reason, is because I didn't expect very much. Force Awakens broke me. I was like, okay, this is going to be the mold of the extras that we get from here on out. So I went into this expecting this is going to sound dismissive, but very little compared to what I'm used to getting in the past. So my expectation was set correctly.
So and let's set that expectation of saying, look, the best that we have gotten is probably the beginning with episode 1.
Yes, hands down.
And
yes.
then Empire of Dreams that came with the DVD release for the Star
2004
Wars original trilogy.
Yeah.
So both of those are probably the pinnacle of what we would consider Star Wars extras, correct?
I would agree. I thought that the Blu-ray set was very good, but I will, to ping past Lucasfilm stuff, is it was always neat to get new stuff with each release.
Right.
But then you wouldn't have the thing, like you don't have Empire of Dreams on Blue. And it's like, okay, come on. We know that it exists. We've watched it. You don't have to withhold it. You can give it, But anyway, I mean, wishes were fishes, right? I will say then that going into this, what was maddening about it was that I didn't like the fact that it very much plays like a series of highlight reels that hints at a bigger documentary that could have been put together.
Right.
It feels like they had somebody sit down and what it comes across as to me is, hey, look at all of these great extras. I've made an 1.5 hour long documentary. That's great. Cut it up into 5 to 8 minute segments. Why? Just cause. I was like, so, okay. Now saying all of that, where it really came to life for me was I wanted more of was when they were talking to the actors, when they were talking to all, especially when they were talking to Forrest Whitaker.
Yes.
And what was especially...
Isn't he phenomenal?
He is. He's amazing. And what was especially maddening about it was they had footage of him talking to Edwards on set without the crazy wig on. So that was from the stuff that was reshot. It's like, I want somebody to talk about this, at least acknowledge that something drastic was redone here.
And I want to ask you about that because it's something that I've been thinking about. I was having this kind of discussion in one of the Star Wars groups online. I think it was maybe the Star Wars Podcast Alliance. And we were talking about the extras and this idea came up. We're getting these releases so soon after the film is released.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really necessarily have the time to create a 2-hour documentary with all of this stuff because there isn't as much time, because the release is coming 4 or 5 months after the original film release. And all of your resources have been into getting that film out. Usually these days, you're probably editing a film and everything up until sometimes even the last second before it has to go to print or, nowadays it just gets, delivered digitally.
Downloaded, yeah.
Exactly. But, you can push that so far. So the actual release for something like a Blu-ray or whatever gets pushed into and condensed, I think, into probably about a 4-month span. But then not even that because you got to go to production on that. So maybe 3 months. And it seems like my point in that was, hey, I would wait another 3 months or more if you were able to deliver a documentary on, say, the making of Rogue One on the Blu-ray that's 2 hours long, that's going to be able to be in depth, where we're going to talk about those things because we have the time to actually go in and record that stuff. Sit down with Gareth Edwards when he's not in mayhem and talk about the making of the movie.
Completely agree with you. I would wait longer for the sake of stronger extras. 100%. You have the audience. You have the people that are going to buy it. We'll wait. At the same time, the only counterpoint I would offer, and granted, I don't work for the studio, so I don't know for sure, but I mean, traditionally, there's always been like a unit publicist. They're shooting stuff on set. There's a documentarian there. So I would think that they would be able to put together the documentary parallel, because it's not like Edwards is shooting the documentary. So, you know, even the time crunch, I think that all that to say, I think that it's a very conscious decision. I mean, based on what you said about Star Wars Celebration Orlando, they have the reel of showing the effects that went, you know, out of phase with Tarkin's face and stuff like that. I wanted even more in depth than what they had on here, because seeing the act, I mean, I gained such an appreciation for that actor for what he did, because and also for the film itself. And this is something I've respected since the beginning, is that they didn't try to computer synthesize Cushing's voice. They had an actor delivering an approximation of his voice, and he got the cadence right. And seeing him sit there and study the dialogue and listen to it over and over again, and he's, you know, I'm about to go in, and he's running the lines that Cushing actually gave so that he can get his voice cadence in the right place. I want to see more of that process. I wanted to see more of the process of, you know, the guy in the Vader suit. What did he study?
Yeah,
how, because he moved legit. Who did he study? Did he study Proust? Did he watch old Bob Anderson dueling photos and backstage footage and stuff like that? Like, did he try to mirror Empire more than A New Hope, or was he consciously looking only at A New Hope so that he only moved like that? Because, you know, like, that's the type of stuff that I'm looking for. And so I think that as fans, I think that supports your point. I'll wait longer for that, and I don't understand why we don't get it.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned just some of the things that happened at Celebration. Unfortunately, that panel was cut short, so we didn't get as much as John Knoll wanted to go into, specifically even just about the creation of Tarkin and Leia and all the work they did there because of the technical issues that we had. What was fantastic is that they had this wonderful scene when they were talking about, you know, creating K2SO and this whole thing that happened where Alan Tudyk is such a great performer, and he's always ad-libbing. That slap came out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
Diego Luna had no idea it was coming. And if you watch carefully, and John Knoll played kind of a frame-by-frame of that, of what happened, Diego puts his hand up to his face because he's laughing.
Oh, that's great.
And they showed the Diego smile. I mean, you could see it as he's putting his hand up to try and, like, keep the take be okay, because he's laughing because he was not expecting that slap to come. And so just things like that, you're absolutely right, that just kind of, I'm surprised weren't on the disc here with the extras, because they're such fun things, you know, and like you said, we are fans who enjoy watching the process, and part of Star Wars has always been the process of making it from the very beginning. You know, I'm reading those old Lucas interviews, and he's talking about the special effects that they're using to create the original Star Wars. That's always been a part of what fans love about the series. And this film specifically is the first one since the prequels that really took technology like George did and just pushed it forward. And I was really glad that we did get in these extras, allowing John Knoll to talk about that just a little bit, because those guys deserve all the credit in the world for what they did here.
Well, and I think something I would have liked to see a little bit more of, because and the guy was pretty unfairly treated by prequel bashers back in the day. People might not want to remember this, but it's true. Doug Chiang.
Absolutely.
The one story that jumped out at me as a longtime fan of these films was the fact that it was very early on in the process, Chiang walked up to Knoll and was like, "Tell me about this. What's going on?" He goes, "Okay, you know what? We don't have a script. I don't care. I'm going to go we're going to start drawing some stuff." And that spoke to me so much of the ethos that's baked into Lucasfilm itself, because Lucas had Macquarie, before the script was even done, do concept pictures that he could sell to the studio. And that, so that there was like this little echo to things. And I would have wanted to see more of that teased out as an acknowledgement to say, this is the reason that audiences are responding to this is because this is baked into the culture of Lucasfilm. This is just how these people operate, you know?
Well, and in a lot of ways, too, how design influences story at Lucasfilm, and that did for George, too, you know?
Sure.
Just think back to the prequels of him seeing Ayla Secura on a comic book and thought, well, I like that, let's put that in. You know, like, design influenced him to the point that he said, to me, that's Star Wars. Let's put it in there and make sure it's officially Star Wars, you know? And so one of we've talked a lot of kind of around the extras. I have to say this. One of the highlights of the extras, I think, that they do give us, one is that you can play them all in sequence. It's about a little over an hour. And I found it to be, forgive me, I don't want to come off rude to Force Awakens, but it was a lot less self-congratulatory of, hey, look what we did. And it felt a little bit more, this is kind of our approach for making a different type of Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And so the process, it just felt less nostalgia-based and everything, and it was kind of, I really enjoyed what we got. I think the only thing you'll hear me say, and I think you'd agree, I just wanted more because it was so good.
Yes, I did want more, and it was so good. But the thing is, I'm always going to deduct major points for that. It doesn't matter what the property is. It bothers me that Marvel movies don't release more on the extras. It bothers me. You know, I want to get in there. I want to soak with it. I want to know the process. Mm-hmm. And you know what? If you want to split it up and say, hey, here's a digital edition you can download that's got 5,000 hours of extras if you really want it. It's going to cost you an extra $10. Okay, great. And here's the version for people who just want to watch the movie. Perfect. That's great too.
Mm-hmm. Well,
but the thing is, to speak to the self-congratulatory tone about Force Awakens, I'm not going to dispute you on that. I think that self-congratulatory tone comes across in Force Awakens because there was such a tremendous risk involved, and they did pull it off, and audiences did respond to it. I got to be honest, I would be a little focused on tooting my own horn too, to be like, yes, we did it. Yes, look, we did it. We're so happy that we did it. We pulled this off. We didn't, we had no legit idea that we would be able to do this, and we did it. Whereas Rogue One comes into the process of, this is an in-house thing. There was a different kind of pressure on it, but at the same time, it was a more film studio type of pressure. This is our project. This is what we're going to do. Let's make it rock, as opposed to, oh my gosh, we have the weight of an entire franchise sitting on our shoulders, and if this fails, our $4 billion investment goes kaput. I think that there is an air of self-congratulatory vibe on the Force Awakens extras, but I would just say that, like, in context, that makes sense to me.
And it is something that's interesting in you talking through all of that, because I think what I really picked up in the extras as they're talking to Kathy and to John and to Gareth, this is a risk. This was a huge risk for them because it was a completely different type of film, and they were trying to make it fit within some semblance of the Star Wars mold, yet at the same time be different. Plus, they are trying to do something that, as they talk enough about, which was really cool to hear them talk about, digital humans, recreating people. And as Gareth said, look, that 99% was tough, but that one last percent to get this just right is as hard as all the rest of the 99. And John Knoll echoes that really too, just how much work this was for them to do. And Kathy says, look, unless John had told us we can do this, we would not have done it. And they really take a big leap forward and a huge risk with this film. And I think, in the end, it really pays off in incredible ways.
Yeah, it does pay off. But I will also say, to sort of counter that, is that we all know that there were significant portions of this redone for whatever reason. And I still will go to my dying day. I am sure of the fact that they shot a version of this. They shot footage where if Tarkin wasn't going to work, they had Vader standing there. So that if the Tarkin thing wasn't going to be pulled off, they still had footage to use. And we know that Riz Ahmed has said that they basically like redid his character in reshoots. They gave him a different sort of arc and a different sort of emotional vibe. I would want to see, especially seeing Riz Ahmed's audition tapes. That was so much fun to watch him doing that. It would have been even greater to see them address it with Forrest Whitaker, to see them basically, for lack of a better phrase, come clean and say, yeah, we didn't know for sure that the Tarkin effect was going to work, and this was how we had planned to deal with it if it didn't. Because it's not like they weren't going to release the movie if the Tarkin effect didn't work. They had to have contingency plans in place. And I want to see that stuff. Because the thing is, there were, to reference what you referenced before, the beginning, there were moments where you saw the doubt and you saw the, Lucas on set, like, okay, how am I going to make this work? How is this effect working? And I want to see that. I want to see those moments come together instead of it coming across as, while it might not have a self-congratulatory tone, it has a very nothing unplanned ever happened and nothing changed from anything.
We're fine. We're all fine here. Yeah, exactly.
Ignore everything you read beforehand.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the story of making film is one that tends to be messy, and especially Star Wars. I mean, gosh, again, reading these old interviews, Lucas talks about, having written 4 different versions of his story treatment and script and everything, and each one kind of being successively different than the other one and having some similarities, but, and never really liking what he got, and of course, with the original Star Wars, he never really liked the movie that came out all that much because he made too many compromises. I mean, that has been part of the story of Star Wars since the very beginning. And it's not a bad story. It's just a part of the innovative storytelling structure of Star Wars in the first place. Like, Star Wars has always been breaking the mold. And I think in a lot of ways, Rogue One kind of breaks a Star Wars mold in some technology, storytelling, structure, and it took them a while to find that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with admitting that that happened. And so the one thing I wanted to really kind of dig into here that I loved finding out about the extras was just how much I love Gareth Edwards. And he had this wonderful quote that I wrote down, and he said, "There's an incredibly difficult fine line that you have to navigate the entire making of the film, which is if you go a little bit to the left, it's not Star Wars. If you go a little to the right, you're just copying Star Wars and not doing anything new. To try and find this new ground was very tricky."
Sure.
And that struck me so hard because he understands the line. And he understands the difficulty of actually creating something new and familiar at the same time in this world, but doing it so that it makes it worth actually watching. And Kathy later on says something about, look, we've kind of come through the nostalgia of this, and now we're more at the point where we want to create Star Wars for this next generation,
right?
The generation that came before. And I thought, okay, I feel like the people involved in Star Wars kind of get it, and I loved both of those things.
Look, I've never doubted that Kathleen Kennedy gets it. There's no way, because the thing is, we know that she was essentially handpicked by Lucas. There's no way that Lucas would have trusted her with Lucasfilm if he didn't think that she could do this. If she didn't understand how it was supposed to go, he would never have tapped her. He obviously trusted her on an intrinsic level. And because this is George Lucas. This is somebody, when he was giving away his company basically and his baby, his whole life's work, he was going to pick somebody who got it, who understood it. And in terms of, I think that it's important acknowledgement from Kennedy that they now have, like, one successful film can be a fluke. 2 successful films means you've got your feet under you. And I will of course acknowledge that whatever structural problems I might still have with Rogue One,
I mean, you'd be wrong, but it's cool.
Yes, it's the Citizen Kane of Star Wars movies.
Whoa! That's Empire. Let's not go crazy.
Well, then what's the Casablanca of Star Wars movies?
Oh gosh. No. Yeah, well, never mind. Well, this is a whole nother discussion. So,
although it could be a fun discussion in and of itself.
You're absolutely right.
But to get back to Edwards, actually, something I'll acknowledge that I think was really fun was somebody, I forget who it was, said that the thing that basically sold them on it was his first film, Monsters, which Mike Schindler and I looked at over on Great Shot Kid here on the Nerd Party Network. And yeah, like I love the fact that it was Monsters that sold them and not Godzilla, because I've always maintained, I was like, oh, well, but Godzilla proved he could do a big effects movie and a big thing and I'm sure that played into it. But I have to acknowledge now that it was Monsters that got him that role. So I invite everybody, go out and get, if you haven't seen it, Edwards' first film and watch it, and you will see his imprint. You will see what part of him made it to the final cut of Rogue One. That this is in its essence, when you sift through some of the stuff that was reshot or inserted, you can definitely see the stuff that is 100% pure, unfiltered Gareth Edwards making it onto screen, and it comes across. And so yeah, I mean that's basically just a free plug for Monsters, his first film. If you haven't seen it, go see it.
That was the fun thing about they talked a lot about the different characters throughout the extras, and they really kind of dig into them with the actors, and I thought that was a lot of fun. And one of the things for me, just in general, and I liked that they did that because I loved these characters, and I felt like that they did such a good job of portraying these characters. Look, we're so used to films these days where you have like 20 films with the same character, so you don't have to have as a full arc for that character in 2 hours. We don't do that anymore, and so people complain about, these characters weren't deep enough, and that's because you're used to having your character around for 15 movies, and so I mean you just get a little bit in piece. Well, but I felt like what they are able to pull off with the amount of characters that they have in this film was pretty substantial, and that they really did a great job of for me, making you care about these characters and love these characters and feel for them when they ended. And I enjoyed getting to walk through that kind of process with each of the actors, kind of talking about what they brought and all that kind of stuff. And I enjoyed that a lot in the extras.
Well, I mean, the thing that I will say is that, I do acknowledge that there are pacing issues here and there with the film, but the chemistry between the actors, there's always the question when you're watching a film of how much of that chemistry is acting. There's always a ratio. A certain percentage is natural chemistry. 2 people walk on set, like David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, and it's like, boom, they were meant to be on screen together. These people were cut from the same cloth. And then there are other times where you watch a film and you say, wow, Harrison Ford and Sean Young, their interaction is electric on Blade Runner, but you watch the behind the scenes stuff on that and just about everybody on set wanted to set Sean Young on fire and ship her back, to her hometown. So a larger percentage of the chemistry was acting as opposed to natural. And the behind the scenes stuff, what really came across to me was the fact that there was a genuine chemistry among these actors. You could tell that, and it does come across on screen. You can tell that Diego Luna and Alan Tudyk had a very fun relationship on set. They actually got along and liked each other, and encapsulated by that one scene where Tudyk is on the Maldives island filming, and he's in his ridiculous mocap suit with the little head sticking up, And Luna's sitting there with an umbrella looking at him saying, nobody on this set respects you right now. You know that,
yes,
right?
That
you
was,
look like
that
something
was
that just
fantastic.
walked out. And he's just absolutely busting his
It's
chops,
like the
and
first
Tudyk's
movie
just taking it. Yeah.
anybody's ever made in like elementary school.
Right
now.
And, but the thing is, you can tell that chemistry is real because Tudyk's just taking it. Tudyk is getting broken down, and he's just like, fine, bring it. I deserve this. But then to see, the fact that the chemistry between our favorite Guardians of the Whills was legit, that they had worked together before, that they remembered each other, that they had, and you see them palling around on set, and you see people actually enjoying each other's company. That definitely bled over into the film and is why you wind up on their side. And Riz Ahmed is such a charming guy. Seeing, again, calling back to those videos that he shot with the 100 different interpretations, right? He's like, I'm spamming the director. I'm going to blow this. But like the whole thing of him so full of energy, and he is an incredible actor. And I enjoyed the fact that they said it was his performance in Nightcrawler that basically got him the role. If you guys haven't seen Nightcrawler, it is phenomenal. It stars Jake Gyllenhaal, but Riz Ahmed is a substantial role in the film. Go and see it, and you'll understand why Lucasfilm watched this and said, that guy, we want him in our movie.
Watching that whole thing, the person that really struck me the most was actually the one that I thought might be the most removed from the process, and that was Forrest Whitaker. But the way in which Forrest talked about researching this character, the fact that he went back and watched the Clone Wars episodes, he really started to dig into the psychology and the history of his character, putting the pieces together about, how he's been trained by Obi-Wan and Anakin, and now he's a part of this, rebellion, and he's been doing it for so long. Look at the impact that it's had on him, and the fact that he even kind of plays the role as in reference to, the mirror that he kind of is for Vader and all of these things. And like the fact that this was a thought process for him, it let me know how much he cares about the role. I mean, he has a smaller role in the movie, but he didn't take it lightly, and I thought that was fantastic. Not only that, but just to find out he's apparently just a huge Star Wars geek, which is phenomenal,
Yes.
Like he really was digging into the minutia that we kind of dig into this on the show.
Yeah, and just to give him the acknowledgement of his role, he is a character. When I came out of it, I was like, would I have cared if it wasn't Saul, sort of thing? But at the times that I've watched it since that first showing, it is a performance that has layers to it that you don't necessarily catch the first time. And hearing him talk about how deeply he researched it, you can sort of peel it apart in your head and say, you know what, that really was a pretty killer performance, because he did make some decisions in his performance, in his vocal performance, in his mannerisms that did speak to the character and communicate non-verbally to the audience what the script might not have in that scene, which in all honesty is the role of an actor, to take the words on the page and give extra weight to them.
Well, and the story group talking about the idea of bringing in Saw, I thought was really nice as well, that it was a very specific idea to do this, because why create a character when you already have one and you can add weight to the Clone Wars series, when you can add weight to the film without having to do a lot of extra work, because it's already there for especially all the people that already know, and then it encourages people to want to go and back and find the older things that it references. And so it's a perfect way of creating symmetry with almost not even trying, I really liked hearing, and I'm glad that they had some of the story group people talk about those different ideas and why they did some of those things, because it's got to be a hard job of trying to keep all this together, but they really are trying to serve the story and be a good guardian of what George left them, and I think that's great, Well,
yeah, I mean, it's almost like this is the best analogy I can think of, but it's almost like when a coach of long-standing retires from a football team. You hope that the person who comes in, or the staff that comes in to replace that staff, learns from what worked and runs with it, and delivers a winning team to you. And getting to see a bit inside the process is very helpful, because it does shed light on, and I think that there was, I think that it opens a question that can't be answered, which is, was there okay. I think it opens a question that I think can't be answered of the basically, like, how much of a domineering force. I'm having trouble formulating the question. Hold on. A question that can't be answered of, has the mission statement shifted at all for them as they're making these films? Was there a different mission statement coming into Force Awakens than there was with Rogue One? And I know that seems to make no sense, but is it something, again, to speak to the different tone of the, they pulled it off with Force Awakens? Were they more relaxed and saying, okay, you know what? We know what we're doing. And so let's trust ourselves to pick the right things to run with here.
It's funny because in light of the extras and Star Wars Celebration and what we got with the Last Jedi trailer, it seems like to me that Rogue One in some ways has almost freed them to just go bonkers with Star Wars and be very creative and take those risks that George talks about when it comes to the story that Dave Filoni talks about George always pushing him to do. Take risks with Star Wars, take risks with the stories, and I feel like they took a risk with Rogue One because they were going to do World War II heist type of movie, and how do we make that feel different and similar and all of that stuff, and they were able to muddle their way through. They came out with a product that's pretty well loved by fans and the public alike, and it's allowed them to have more confidence in, at least from what I saw with the new trailer for Last Jedi, just kind of like really go pedal to the metal,
Yeah.
And so I think that's great. I think it bodes well for, other story movies like Han Solo, hopefully, and things like that. So yeah, this is
sure.
This is part of that.
I mean, it does bode well for, the Han Solo stuff and everything. In terms of pulling it off, again, the one glaring thing about these extras that will always bother me that I didn't get was more detail about what it was that changed, what it was that they brought in Tony Gilroy for, what it was that Stuart Baird, who is acknowledged in the credits as additional editing consultation, okay? Stuart Baird is in there. What did he do? What did he do? What did he do to help shape this? Like, I do still want to drill down to those levels. But how did you feel about the extras on the Rogue One disc?
On a whole, I think that they're decent. They're really decent, and I enjoyed them slightly more than I did the ones for The Force Awakens. I feel like there was just a little bit more depth there. I agree. I would love to see some more of the depth about what they were doing before. Honestly, I just say the answer to that question, I think, is really before this movie was one that was probably going to have a much happier ending because at least some of the people were going to survive, and they got the okay to say, no, you can just axe them all. And that really changed the structure of what they were going to do, and that led to probably a lot of rewrites and reshooting for those final ends so that they had a much more melancholy end to this film capped packed with hope, and to pull that off well, I could tell how that would take a lot of rewriting, restructuring.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was definitely a lot of rewriting, but I want to know about the decision making process because with the reshoots with Ring of Kafrene and stuff like that. I want to sit down with those, with them after the first screening, where they said, you know what, we need this, bring in Tony Gilroy, bring in Stuart Baird, let's reshape a couple, let's help Edwards reshape a couple of these things.
Kafrene. I mean, let's just be honest, that's just a fantastic scene.
You and I definitely have opinions on that scine. We definitely
yes, we do.
We have
but what are your opinions,
John,
about the actual extras?
I will say this, that if they're going to put together these 5 to 8 minute commercials for the movie, I mean, this is the sort of thing I expect to see like when I'm in the Blockbuster video store, where it's like, do I want to rent Rogue One? I didn't see it in the movie
John,
theater.
do you want to explain what Blockbuster Video is to people who don't know what that is?
No, because Google exists, and
okay.
I'm not going to let them get off the hook for that. But there's definitely a thing where they had enough footage here and it runs for an hour back to back. Just stitch it together. Just put it, even if what I got here was simply stitched together as one piece, I'd have been happier with it. Instead of the every 5 to 8 minutes, fade out, new thing, fade out, new thing. It's like, just put it together and do a thing.
Well, and let me also say this as we kind of close. I think and I think anybody who enjoys film, the absolute pinnacle of extras is probably the Lord of the Rings extended series. Each one of those has a 3-hour documentary about the making of the film, which goes into everything that you'd want to know about the making of the film, whether it's the costumes or everything. I mean, and it's so impeccably done. The quality of it is just outstanding. I've watched each one of those multiple times because they're so enjoyable and so interesting. They released those, though, a year later.
Right.
So, again, I think if we're just being constructively critical, heck, I would wait to buy the movie for a year if I knew that was what was going to come on the Ultimate Edition release of Rogue One, of The Force Awakens, of any Star Wars film that's going to come out, because you had time to go in and do that kind of extensive documentary look at from day one to the end, and that's kind of what they do in the beginning, and that's a really good documentary. But, it's a little bit unfortunate to me personally that Star Wars, the biggest franchise out there, can't have a Lord of the Rings style type documentary about the making of its different films, which we as fans would just eat up like candy. I mean,
yeah.
So
no, absolutely. And to speak to your point, to again offer you support, you got a new movie coming out in December. Release this at Thanksgiving in time for the Christmas season with the full documentary on it. You're going to make $1 billion in the home market, and you're going to make $2 billion in the movie market, and you can just walk down the street with your suit made of cash and buy people if you want to, and trade them to Warner Brothers if you wish. It's like, Warner Brothers, would you like an actor?
Crying in your huge piles of money.
Right, blowing your nose with $1,000 bill.
Oh, $1,000. I don't even want to touch that.
Does a $1,000 bill exist?
I'm sure it does, but I will never know.
How sad is it that I don't know? I feel like I should know that. I really do.
Well, John, while you ponder that, if somebody kind of wants to catch up with some of the other things that you're doing online, where should they be looking, and what should they be listening to by you?
Well, they can stay right here on the Nerd Party Network and listen to an aforementioned show, Great Shot Kid, that I co-host with Mike Schindler, where we look at the work of Star Wars creators outside of Star Wars. For instance, we looked at Monsters by Gareth Edwards, and that's the movie that got him this job. So there you go. You can find me over on the Trek.fm network, also with Mike Schindler, doing what I said about the Star Wars stuff on Great Shot Kid, but for Star Trek creators. And you can find me co-hosting Words with Nerds, a weekly zany podcast with my pal Craig. And if you're really quiet on a moonless night and you're looking around quietly on the internet, if you're not too loud, you can find a Kessel junkie running around somewhere out there. But don't scare him. Don't scare him. He's very jittery. So where can they find you, Matt?
Well, I'm actually trying to catch that Kessel junkie on Instagram at mrushing, trying to get that elusive picture, kind of like the snipe.
It's like Bigfoot. It's like
yeah,
Bigfoot.
Exactly. Which I live in the Northwest, so hopefully I'll find that too. You can find me on Twitter at MattRushing02. I'm also here in the network, as we talked about earlier. Owlpost with Dre Kaufman. By the time this comes out, the same day, we will have finished book 1. The Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone will be in the bag, and we will be moving on to Chamber of Secrets. So make sure you're checking out that show. It's super fun. I'm over on the Trek FM network as well, just like you are. I'm talking about The Orb, and that's Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Deep Space Nine with Chris Jones. We're about to be back on that show in a few weeks. Can't wait for that. And I do the General Geek Show over there. I love the 602 Club. It is such a blast to be able to talk about all the fandoms we love, not just Star Wars, not just Star Trek, but everything. Now we talk some Star Wars, and you're going to want to check out Star Wars' 602 Club collection. All of that is available on Apple Podcasts, so make sure you check those out. John, I think there's only one thing left to say. I think it's time to close negotiations.
Matt, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.